Welcome to the Egg Whisperer Show, a program exclusively designed to promote reproductive health awareness and discuss fertility preservation options. Here is your host, the Harvard-educated fertility specialist, Dr. Amy.
She's known as the Egg Whisperer. Fertility expert Dr. Amy Abazadeh.
And you have yet another success story
Just launched by an East Bay fertility doctor.
Welcome to the Egg Whisperer Show. I have Whitney Bischoff Angel joining us today to talk all about egg freezing. Welcome, Whitney.
Hi, Dr. Amy. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad that you're joining us today to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, and that's fertility preservation. And there's no better person to talk about it than you.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad to be here. And finally, that we get to meet, right? It's been a long time.
I'm sure, like a lot of people who've been watching you for almost 10 years, I think, right? How long ago were you on The Bachelor?
Oh my gosh. So let's see. We filmed in 2014 and aired in 2015. Seems like a lifetime ago.
Years, but I think we've gotten to know you quite a bit. And what you're doing for women's health is tremendous. So keep doing it. And that's what I want to talk about today. But before we get into it, I just want to tell our audience just a little bit more about you. Whitney Bischoff Angel is a fertility nurse and patient advocate at OVA Egg Freezing Specialty Center, specializing in fertility preservation for women. Whitney made the personal decision to freeze her own eggs. She's way ahead of her time in 2013, which she credits for making her an even stronger fertility nurse. And then in 2015, Whitney joined ABC's The Bachelor. And since then, she's been using her platform to promote egg freezing, educating women around the world to be proactive versus reactive when it comes to their reproductive health. She's appeared on ABC's Nightline, Good Morning America, Extra TV, People Magazine, Women's Health Magazine, and many other publications. Welcome again to the show, Whitney. And I'm excited to talk to you about 8, I'm sure we'll talk about more, great reasons to freeze your eggs, and a little bit about IVF. So first of all, how did you get interested in becoming a fertility nurse?
That's a really good question. I almost fell into it. You know, when I started my nursing career, I was working in the cardiac ICU and telemetry and thought that was really where my path was going to take me. And I quickly realized that I needed to pivot because it just was a lot to take home every day. There was a lot of loss and death, and I just needed to kind of figure out a different avenue. And so I did the opposite, more bringing life into this world and helping women achieve that goal of becoming a mother.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of drama on both sides, and certainly giving people that gift of life by being their own egg donor certainly is so rewarding. So you had your eggs frozen in 2013. I mean, a lot of people weren't doing it back then. What helped you make that decision nearly 10 years ago?
So when I made the decision to freeze my eggs, you're right, it was definitely not in vogue at the time. And I was working in an IVF facility in third-party reproduction. So women that were having to utilize either a surrogate or an egg donor. And part of my role as their nurse was not only, assisting them with their cycle and the things that you would, think about a normal nursing role, but also just listening and being there for them. And I would hear so many women say, I wish I had the opportunity to freeze my eggs. I wish I could go back in time and do this for myself and my future. And for me, I took a step back and I'm thinking, it's kind of like a light bulb moment, right? Like why am I not doing this? I trust the science. I trust the experts that I'm working with. And so for me, I always say this, I don't know a lot about life, but I always knew that I wanted to be a mom. So if there was anything that I could do to help control that, even just a little bit, I was going to take it.
That's awesome. And I want to make sure people know what OVA egg freezing is, the specialty center specializing in fertility preservation that you're a leader in. So tell us about that.
Well, I would say probably around the time that I was coming off of The Bachelor, Colleen Coughlin, who is our lab director and founder, came to me with this idea of having a home base for women that were going through fertility preservation. And she, asked like, hey, would you like to help me with this? And for me, because I had been on the patient side, I knew that there was so much education and growth needed around this topic. I mean, Dr. Amy, the number of women that I would say didn't even know about their own bodies when I was telling them about this in 2013 was astonishing to me. So, she asked if I would be interested, and I was so excited to help with this. And what we did was, we really just took patients' experiences to help build the business model of OVA. So asking women that had gone through the process, what did you like? What did you not like? What would you do differently? And the two pieces, I would say, the critiques were just that women felt like their expectations weren't managed. And also, women a lot of times felt like they got lost in the shuffle at the IVF clinic. So we use those as our building foundations, and OVA is just an extension of the IVF clinic to have a home base for women that are going through that fertility preservation, whether that's egg or embryo freezing.
I love it. And then where can they go to see you at OVA? Is it just for women in Chicago, or is it for women all over the country?
Absolutely not. So our brick and mortar is in Chicago, downtown on Michigan Avenue, but we see patients from all over the country and the world. So patients can always reach out to us via Instagram if they want to. So it's at OVA Egg Freezing. They can call us and we can give that information towards the end, or go to ovaeggfreezing.com. And I always feel like I'm happy to talk to people, even if they are unsure if they want to freeze their eggs, through my social as well.
And what sets OVA apart from other egg freezing centers?
We specialize specifically in egg freezing. We're owned by the laboratory, which I also think sets us apart, because many women, when you're thinking about freezing eggs, may just Google fertility clinics, but you're not thinking about the experts in the lab that are kind of going through the actual vitrification process. And that's very, very important. So we really focus on the experience for the women. This is an elective procedure, and we really focus on education as well.
That's super huge. And I know that you do that also on your Instagram account. And one of my recent favorites was a big list of reasons to freeze your eggs. And I would love if you could walk us through those. So, number one, how does freezing your eggs when you're young help your future self?
Well, I think this is so important to educate women at a young age, because we know as we're getting older, the quality and the quantity of our eggs is going down. So by freezing your eggs when you're young, you're really giving yourself more chance of success for the future. So we know that you likely won't need as many cycles, you won't need as many medications, but also that percentage of success of that egg turning into an embryo and a live birth is going to be higher.
I mean, I would say like 10, 15 years ago, women were freezing their eggs as a reaction to their levels changing. They were older, their FSH was high, their AMH was lower. And finally, I'm seeing that script flip. And now people are freezing their eggs when they're younger, making it way easier on me to help them when they're ready to use their eggs. So I couldn't agree with you. So number two, you talk about having your eggs frozen. I'm going to roll my eyes now, as an insurance policy. How can helpful to people?
The key piece of management of expectations. By no means, and it's very important that we tell women when they are coming in to freeze their eggs, this is not a guarantee. This is, giving yourself more control than if you did nothing and let Mother Nature continue to run her course. But it's not 100%. So we need to be sure that patients understand that when they are investing into their future, that they know that it's not a guarantee. So that's really important. But I think the insurance policy, catchphrase is more so because you don't know what's going to happen in the future. So, I swear, when I froze my eggs, I had no idea what was going to be happening within the future 10 years, a decade later. And that's one thing that always stayed consistent for me, knowing that I had those eggs there. So it took a little bit of pressure off.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like nowadays people are even freezing more. I think in the beginning, people were just doing like one set of eggs and then thinking that that was enough. And it's really great to see people do more work to preserve potentially what they may need for their second kid, or even third or ninth, like Elon Musk. I'm just kidding. Okay. So many people worry, this is number three, about a biological clock and finding the right person. And how does egg freezing change that?
For me personally, it really took that pressure off and that stress, as I was just mentioning, because I think as women, we always feel that clock as we're getting closer to 30 and then 35. And I hate to hear that someone may have just chosen a partner just specifically because they felt like they had to because of their fertility. So this is giving women the option. Again, you don't have to settle. Go live your life. You're allowed to have it all. And this is going to help, again, just a little bit more control so that you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, one of my good friends, she always says, you can have it all, but maybe not all at the same time. So number 4, and this breaks my heart when I see patients that have, a terrible diagnosis like cancer. How can egg freezing help with that?
So, unfortunately, when patients do have that diagnosis of cancer and they're going to have to be on treatment like chemotherapy, we know that that is going to affect their fertility. And so it can sometimes push them into menopause. So, a lot of times women will want to go through the egg freezing process before they start that treatment so that they can have a chance of a family in the future. But alternatively, sometimes, women have other chronic medical conditions that may impact them from even being able to carry a baby in the future. So, anytime that you have, this, a pre-existing medical condition, chronic medical condition, even things like diabetes or high blood pressure that could affect your future fertility or impact you carrying, I think it's always a good idea to think about.
One of the things that I do with my egg freezing patients, I always ask them a series of questions that let me know if they actually have to do IVF to have a baby, right? So let's say they had a ruptured appendix as a child and they were in the hospital for 3 weeks and the surgeon told them that there's so much infection around their pelvis that maybe their tubes are blocked. So tubal blockage, history of chlamydia, gonorrhea, having an ovary removed, or, something like that, that maybe IVF is the path forward, or a genetic mutation, for example, like BRCA gene. So knowing that in advance and when you're doing your egg freezing is a great time to learn more about your body. And that leads to number 5, is one of the things that I talk about is your Tushy check, if you haven't heard of that.
And I have.
It sounds, but it's very serious, is the why is your genetic profile. So what genetic situations come up that might make it so a person should consider egg freezing?
So I think you hit the nail on the head with that BRCA gene, any sort of recessive genetic disorder. I think a lot of times it's important to educate women if they want to check on that recessive genetic sort of panel to see if they are a carrier for a recessive gene. If they know already that they are, or they are with someone that they know carries that exact same gene, by freezing eggs, you're able to do that testing on the embryo to ensure that the embryo is not affected, that we would be transferring. So it's important to educate on that. Sometimes women choose not to do that testing at the time of egg retrieval and may not want to do it until if and when they come back to use the eggs, which is fine as well.
Yeah, I agree. It's fine. But for example, the other day I diagnosed Fragile X in someone. And it's like, yeah. And it's like, knowledge is power. Know your genes. The more you know, better things will go. So now she's going to freeze even more eggs. You know what I mean? And that's just one of many reasons why sometimes knowing more early on is better. I'm glad you guys offer that. So number 6 is women are often waiting until later to have kids. Around here, people are showing up at 41 for their first baby. Really. Age at first birth was 32 when I started my practice, and it's creeped up to 39, and now my average patient is in their early 40s. So why is egg freezing an important option for someone traveling or focusing on their career goals?
In this day and age, we're in the 21st century, women should be able to do, as I mentioned earlier, anything that they want to do, and they shouldn't let their biological clock or their fertility to be holding them back. So whether that is going to further your education, maybe that's traveling the world, maybe that's just because you don't know if you want to have children. This is just, again, opening up the options so that you have more control and not just saying, oh, well, if I'm going to travel, then, or I'm going to go traveling for the next, several years, or I want to go get my master's in something that, oh, then I have to sacrifice my family. By freezing eggs, you're able to open up the doors to all different things, so where you don't have to be worried about that biological clock.
And there's really something that I think comes with egg freezing, even if those eggs don't turn into a successful pregnancy. There's something psychological that I think could be beneficial. It's like you're proud of yourself. Like, I did this for myself, and I think that's pretty cool. You just learn so much about your fertility along the way. So that takes me to number 7. Some people say to me that they don't know if they want to have children, even though they're coming in considering egg freezing. So why might someone in that situation want to freeze their eggs?
Because it's giving them more time to think about it. It's just giving more options. And I think, I talk with a lot of women and they say, I don't know if I want children, but they're gathering the information about egg freezing because I think it's, like you said, more psychological. If they learn about egg freezing and then they say, you know what, I know that these are my options, but I'm going to choose not to. That is easier to sort of grasp than someone that says, I never knew it was an option. I never knew that I could freeze my eggs, and I wish that I would have. So by coming in and just talking about it, even if you do ultimately make the choice that it's not right for you, but you gathered all of the information, again, it's just more about that knowledge is power and knowing that you have options for the future.
And then you don't have regret. I mean, if you actually talk through it and you said to yourself, it wasn't good for me at this time, then later on, if it turned out that the window wasn't open for you anymore to do it, you can't beat yourself up. Literally, you just have to say, I did what was right for me at the time and just move on. So this is number 8, how can egg freezing help with growing a family in the future? And I'll just tell you a joke. Actually, it's not a joke. It's very serious, but I say it in a joking way, so it's not so serious. But one of the questions I ask my families is the patients who come in who are coupled, I say, what are the chances that you're going to be together in a year? Seriously, like 5 years ago, that was not a question that I would ask people. And so you can kind of see where I'm going with this is, if your answer is not 100%, please freeze your eggs. So how can egg freezing help with growing a family in the future? And I'm talking about what you're going to say, and then I'll add something funny too.
Okay. I think a lot of, when egg freezing first came out, people a lot of times thought it was just for their first child. Am I going to need this for baby number 1? But I think that we're seeing more and more women coming back with secondary infertility. Maybe it's for baby number 2 or baby number 3. And also to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, I mean, sometimes women, a relationship may not have worked out. There's a second marriage. So it gives, there's I honestly, Dr. Amy, I think about all of the reasons to freeze your eggs. I think it's easier sometimes to talk about the reasons, like why wouldn't you? Because the options of freezing your eggs, there's so many reasons why, but this is just one of them.
And that's what I was going to say. Freeze your eggs for husband number 2 or husband number 3. So many patients now over the age of 45, their kids are grown, and now they're ready to have another baby with their new husband.
And I think you're so right. You're being your own future egg donor. That's the bottom line. I love it.
So when you talk to people about freezing their eggs, what are some of the most frequently asked questions?
I think the number one thing is, what are the side effects? What can I be prepared for? So what are the side effects of the medications, or questions about the actual injection process? Am I actually going to give myself shots? I think it's very intimidating when you hear about the process. But, we really try to break it down and we educate you on this. And the more, again, you learn about the shots and before your actually go time, we're having medication teaches and sending you videos. And if you want to do a sample shot, you can do that. And there's, if you truly are like, I cannot give myself a shot, you're crazy if you think that I'm going to be able to do this, there's also services available to women to assist with it. But I think, the number one questions I get are about the actual injections, possible side effects of the injections, how long could the eggs be frozen, which we know is indefinitely.
Yeah, I'm a fertility myth buster right there with you. And I think another question people ask me is, so you got 12 eggs. Does this mean I'm going to go into menopause 12 months earlier? And then there's the whole, is this going to cause cancer? And, obviously.
Or am I taking eggs from the future, which we know is not the case. We're actually saving eggs that you would have lost that month anyway.
So Whitney, I don't want to get too personal, but we know you froze your eggs back in 2013. And I have a feeling everyone wants to know what happened. Did you need to use those eggs?
Okay, so yes, I get this question all the time, and I am an open book, so definitely not off the table. But I didn't use the eggs, but I did think about it. So I got to tell you, my husband and I were trying for a couple months, and I needed to take my own advice because I know it can take some time. But when it's your body and you're on this, schedule, and I'm very type A, I was wondering, gosh, it's been just a couple months. Why is this not working? So I called Dr. Kaplan, and I said, Dr. Kaplan, should I tap into my eggs that I froze when I was 27? And his question to me was, do you want more than one child? And of course I do. And I was still young, and he's like, you need to be patient, keep trying. Let's keep those eggs frozen for baby number 2 or baby number 3. And so I did take his advice, and I'm very glad that I did. I eventually was able to conceive naturally. I have a 3-year-old little boy named Hayes who is upstairs snoozing right now. But my husband and I would love to expand our family. And so it's really nice to know that I still have those eggs.
I want to see if there's anything else that you would like to add.
I mean, first of all, thank you so much for having me on and reaching out and, continuing to open the discussion around egg freezing. I think it's really important that, women use their platform that we have here to reach so many different people throughout the country and let them know about egg freezing, fertility preservation. And again, the younger you are when you do this, the better. But no time, I mean, any time is better than no time though, right? Just to get the information and check in on your fertility.
Well, I just know that if I was someone who was considering egg freezing, I would love to have you be my fertility nurse and have you be educating me about the process. I can only imagine that the clinic that you've aligned yourself with and the lab is top notch. So thank you for all that you're doing.
You're so sweet. Thank you.
You're welcome. So tell us again, where can we find OVA? Where can we learn more about the process and the steps needed to get onboarded with your clinic?
Yeah, so if you want to reach out to OVA, you can always call us, 312-800-0228. You can always go to our website, which is www.ovaeggfreezing.com. On Instagram, our handle is @ovaeggfreezing. And I am trying to put out more and more content as the days and the weeks go on. So if you're interested in any of that, my personal page is Whitney_B_Angel.
Well, thank you, Whitney, so much for coming on today.
Thank you, Dr. Amy. It's been a pleasure.